it was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they love me and, just turn their back on you in a second.
The worst thing that can happen to you isn't failure. It's getting attention before you're ready for it. We're taught to chase visibility, to build an audience, to get recognized, to make it as fast as possible. But nobody talks about what happens when recognition arrives before your identity is built. Because when status grows faster than your internal foundation, it doesn't elevate you, it exposes you.
Concerned about you, though, okay?
Gotten shots, like, please, guys. No, guys, please, guys, don't do this. No.
We talk about failure as if it's the biggest threat to your future, but failure is slow. Failure gives you time to adjust. Failure builds structure. Status doesn't. Status accelerates everything. It magnifies your insecurities. It inflates your ego. It pressures you to perform. It forces you to maintain an image you may not even understand yet. And when your identity is built around external recognition before your internal stability is formed, you don't grow into the status. You bend around it, and eventually something breaks. So what does that actually look like? What happens when someone is handed enormous status before they've developed the internal structure to handle it? History gives us extreme examples of this pattern. Not influencers, not internet fame, real power. Louis XVI became King of France at just 19 years old. He inherited enormous power, enormous responsibility, and a collapsing financial system. But he didn't inherit decisiveness. He didn't inherit psychological readiness. He didn't inherit the ability to control a nation on the brink of revolution. He had status, but he didn't yet have the internal authority to carry it. And when crisis came, he hesitated. He wavered. He avoided reform. He tried to maintain appearances. The result? The French Revolution. Execution, collapse. It wasn't just political failure. It was a young man handed absolute power before his identity had solidified. Status outpaced structure, and the system corrected itself violently. Now, you may think, that's politics, that's monarchy, that's extreme power. But this pattern doesn't just exist in governments. It exists anywhere status outpaces identity, even in entertainment, especially in childhood fame.
Good evening. I'm Amanda. You may remember me as Cousin Oliver from the Brady Bunch. There's a tragedy sweeping the nation that deserves our attention. The sad truth is, very few people know what to do when old ladies attack.
Amanda Bynes became famous as a child, loved, celebrated, watched by millions. When your identity forms under constant public attention, something subtle happens. You don't just grow up. You perform growing up. Your self-worth starts attaching to applause, to approval, to visibility. And when adulthood arrives, and the applause changes, or slows, or criticizes, if your internal foundation wasn't built separately from fame, it fractures. Public breakdown, media spectacle, a narrative of fall from grace. But maybe it wasn't a fall. Maybe it was a delayed collapse because the identity was built around being seen, not being stable. Two completely different worlds. A king in the 18th century France, a child star in modern Hollywood, but the underlying structure is still the same. Status arrived before identity stabilized, and that's where the real problem begins. Here's the real secret. Status is external, identity is internal. If identity is still forming and status arrives early, your brain does something dangerous. It adapts to the applause. You begin shaping yourself around what gets rewarded. Psychologically, that creates dependency. You don't ask, who am I? You ask, what version of me gets validated? And that gap grows quietly. The larger the gap between your public image and your internal stability, the more fragile your success becomes. Because you're not sustaining it with structure, you're sustaining it with performance. And here's where this becomes uncomfortable. Because it's easy to look at historical figures or celebrities and think, that would never be me. But modern culture is built around accelerating status. You don't need a crown, you don't need a movie deal. All you need is visibility. Now, think about modern culture. Social media, personal brands going viral, chasing clout. We're encouraged to get attention fast, to build status fast, to scale fast. But internal development is slow. Discipline is slow. Emotional maturity is slow. Self-awareness is slow. And when attention accelerates faster than maturity, the crash isn't immediate, it's delayed. Burnout, scandals, ego explosions, identity crisis, public meltdowns. It's not that status is bad, it's that status amplifies whatever is already inside you. If that inside isn't stable, fame doesn't build you, it destabilizes you. Maybe the goal shouldn't be to get recognized as fast as possible. Maybe the goal is to become someone who can survive recognition, because status will test your ego. It will test your discipline, it will test your identity, and if you build your internal foundation first, recognition becomes expansion. But if you chase recognition first, you might spend the rest of your life trying to hold together a version of yourself that was never fully formed. The worst thing that can happen to you isn't failure. It's becoming visible before you become stable.